Alvaro Morata is out for up to 6 weeks with a hamstring injury, which is bad news for Chelsea. Morata has 6 goals, which places him joint second after Romelu Lukaku's 7 with Harry Kane. The Chelsea striker has scored 50% of Chelsea's goals. Of the 9 players who have scored 4 or more goals, only Jamie Vardy has scored a higher proportion of his team's total. In Vardy's case, he has 5 of the Foxes' 9. Morata has 6 of Chelsea's 12. Rampant Manchester City are the only side with more than one player who has scored 4 or more goals this season. Every other side is more reliant on one player. If one looks at the top 10 teams for goals scored last season, and who their top scorer was, no team was that reliant on one striker. In fact, only Lukaku, who fired in 25 of Everton's 62 goals, comes close, with 40.3% of the Toffees' goals. Liverpool and Leicester are interesting here, as the only 2 teams in the top 10 for goals without an individual in the top 10. Liverpool spread the goals around, along with the Reds. Only Spurs and Arsenal had 3 goal scorers in double figures last season. Leicester still relied heavily on Vardy. He just didn't score that many in a season when the Foxes didn't either. What is also interesting is that 6 of the teams in the top 10 for goals had a player who got around 30% of their goals. Only Chelsea, Man City and Liverpool had top scorers with fewer than 25% of their team's goals, and only Everton's Lukaku got such a high proportion. Though it is worth noting that Jermaine Defoe grabbed 51.7% of Sunderland's goals. No player did more for their side in the league last season if it was ultimately in vain. Beyond the 30% main man though, only Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal and Liverpool had other players who scored at a rate that suggested they could step up. In fact, only 12 players scored 15 or more goals last season, and Spurs and Chelsea were the only sides who had 2 players in that list. Overall, 1,029 total goals were scored last season, and those 12 players scored 230 of them. 22.4% of all last season's Premier League goals were scored by just 12 men. In fact, 543 players appeared in at least one Premier League game in 2016-17, and so 2.2% of players who made a Premier League appearance scored 22.4% of the goals. A small proportion of players score a large proportion of goals. But, and here's the rub for Chelsea, last season and others show that teams who score a lot of goals do not rely so heavily on one man. Of course, Morata's injury might open the door for Michy Batshuayi or someone else to step up, but Chelsea's reliance on the Spanish striker so far does not bode well for the period they'll be without him.